Happy February and welcome to a bonus episode of season 2 of Dr. G at the Heart of Healthcare. This will be episode 39, hashtag HAPC 25, highlights with hospice nurse Julie.
Woo-woo.
Ooh. New York Times bestseller, hospice nurse Julie. Let's give her some. Welcome,
Hello. Thanks for having
welcome.
me.
Oh, I'm so glad that you're here. Let
I
me
know, me
just
too.
let me just set you up a little bit, everyone. So, hospice nurse Julie is like the numero uno social media influencer, and she is a New York Times bestseller of Nothing to Fear. And her social media influence is very evident. I saw on your website it says you're alleviating the fear around death and dying. I do the same thing. That's why we're all here. And so I'm so happy I was able to see you at the assembly. And where were we? I forgot now. Denver,
You're
Colorado.
in Denver. Yes, yes. It was beautiful. It was nice. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like my mind is spinning because I literally left there and went to Italy for my 50th birthday. So I'm like, where am I right now?
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. That's
Yeah.
amazing.
But thank you for being the guest. And we're just going to talk about the conference. I ran into hospice nurse Julie. She was hanging out there with Dr. Matthew Tyler, who was on for Doctor's Day. And I was like, this is so perfect for us to just chat about the conference because they need to know what's up with hospice nurse Julie.
Yes, you were one of the first people I saw. I like flew in the night before really late and then like woke up early. I have a great story that I'll tell you in a second about like
Oh,
who I
yes.
saw at my hotel. That is
Yes.
honestly that made the whole entire trip, that one encounter, which I'll talk to you about. But then yeah, you were one of the first people I saw with How to Train Your Doctor, Dr. Matt.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. So no, that's good. And your story is the highlight because this podcast, the audience who knows, we follow a story and then we do education and empowerment. We keep it sweet and to the point. So let's just go ahead and jump in. But before we do that, let me just tell everybody about the annual assembly. It's the annual assembly of hospice and palliative care by the American Academy of Hospice and Palliative Medicine and the Hospice and Palliative Care Nurses Association. And so this year it was at the Convention Center in Denver, Colorado. And as I said, I ran into hospice nurse Julie. But before we go, I want you to tell everyone how long you've been a hospice nurse. I know you were MICU first and all that. Just give us a little brief background on how you got to be hospice nurse Julie, New York Times bestseller.
Craziest. That part is honestly still hard for me to believe. So I've been a nurse for 16 years. I was an ICU nurse for about 8 of those years, and now I've been a hospice nurse for like the other 8, or maybe like 7 and 9. I really have to actually figure it out, but it's something like that, you know. And how the whole hospice nurse Julie thing came about was truly, I mean, it's like out of this world. I didn't mean to do it. I feel like it was 3 or 4 years ago. I had a couple friends whose parents were dying, and I was talking to them on a daily basis about like their journey and what they were going through and what they were seeing with their parents. And the things that I would rattle off would be anything that like you would rattle off. Anyone in like our line of work would just sort of be rattling off these things. And they had known me for years and were like, what the, like, you know, this stuff? Like, where did this come from? Like, does everyone know this? And I'm like, well, I think people who work in hospice know this. And they were like, everyone needs to know this. You should do a podcast. Cause I'm like in my 40s, right? So it's like, we do podcasts. And podcasts are hard, as you know. I didn't want to edit it. I didn't want to like, who would I interview? What would I talk about? Like all the things. So I even got a microphone to like maybe start doing it. And then I went home to see my nieces who are tweens. They were like 13, 14 years old, and they were on TikTok. And I literally have video of me and them teaching me how to do TikTok and teaching me dances and like all the things, right? And I got on TikTok under a different name, not Hospice Nurse Julie, just to like watch their TikToks and like be fun with them that weekend. And then I started seeing like all the fun stuff on TikTok, like people my age talking about space and gardening and cooking. And I thought, oh my gosh, I'm just going to come on here and make a few videos about death and dying And I literally had probably 5 ideas, and the 3rd or 4th video went viral, and it was like, I guess I'm gonna do this now. And then it truly just kept happening. Like, and then someone wrote an article and then that went viral. And because of that article, I got a book deal. And like it just unfolded on its own. And here we are talking today. It's so crazy.
Well, congratulations on all your success. Audience,
Thank
you may
you.
know we had her bestie on here, hospice nurse Penny, a
Yes.
few months ago. But yeah, I learned about you too. You guys went live once on Instagram, and I was like, who are these ladies? What are they talking about? What's going on? Because you're like, cool, you look just regular. And so I was intrigued. We met at Endwell in 2023. That was the
Yeah.
first time we saw each other at the hospice table talk. And so obviously I followed, and I was just so happy to see you at the assembly. So let's just go ahead and get this going and jump right in. So there is a story
Oh my God.
that hospice nurse Julie has.
I don't know if you remember the story. I think
I
I told
remember.
you when I first saw you.
I remember because you were still vibrating from it. And
Yeah.
the reason why this is so important is because this is what the assembly is about. I remember the first time I went in Montreal, and my mentor was like, this is your tribe. It's like, so you're going to go and see your people. Like, we don't have to explain ourselves. And
Yeah.
so when you shared that story about that encounter, that was what it is about. So
Yeah.
let's go ahead and jump into your story. First timer, hospice nurse Julie, she ran into someone at breakfast who was instrumental in her first career development. So share with us that encounter.
Yes. So first off, I went to this conference very last minute on my own dime. Like I was kind of like, I want to learn, I want to see people, I'm going to go to this conference. And so it was last minute. So I couldn't get into like the hotel that was like in the whole like right there. I had to go only a couple blocks away, but still, right? It wasn't like for the conference, which is even more weird because I happened to see this person. And I'm like kind of nervous. It's the first day. I haven't been to this conference yet. And I was downstairs getting breakfast in the omelet line. And the first person I see, and this is a random hotel in Colorado, is my mentor, Dr. Anna Cartmel. I haven't seen her for years. She was the very first hospice doctor that basically took me under her wing when I first started hospice nursing, and I was like scared because I'd been an ICU nurse for so long, and it was so different. You know, hospice is so different. And I have not seen her since I stopped working at that one hospice agency. And I've been meaning to get a hold of her because she didn't know anything about hospice nurse Julie, and like that I wrote a book, and all the things that not all the things, but many of the things that I say, many of the things that people love hearing me say are things that like have come from her. Have like, because I used to follow her around and do her face to faces, you know, and listen to her talk to patients, because I never learned how to talk to people about death and dying. So like I would follow her around and listen to how she would do it. And I would like soak it all up. And she was so good at it. She was so good at it. So all of a sudden, here she is in the omelet line. And I literally just go, Dr. Carmel. And she turned around and she didn't recognize me at first. It probably has been like 5 years. And I go, it's Julie from Waka Waka. I'm not going to say the name of the company, from Waka Waka. And she goes, oh my God, I haven't seen you forever. Anyway, we ended up getting breakfast together. I told her everything. I was like, because normally I don't tell people about like, I'm hospice nurse Julie. You know, I just feel embarrassed, right? So, but to her, my mentor, I was like, listen,
You're her baby.
I'm like, you don't know, but I started a whole channel. I'm hospice nurse Julie. I wrote a book. Like, I love hospice. I love it because of you. Like, you taught me everything. You taught me how to talk to people, to help me really fully understand death and dying, like all because of you. And I go, and I've been really nervous about like saying your name online because I haven't talked to you about it yet. I didn't know if that you'd be okay with that, but I really want people to know who you are and your name and how you helped me. And so she gave me permission that day. So I still haven't made a video, but I really want to make a video about like seeing my mentor and getting her permission to like share that like she's the one that really put this on my heart to like love hospice. And okay, I'm almost done, but
no, you keep going, girl.
We exchanged numbers, and sure enough, she was already in my stupid phone. I didn't even know she was already in there, which I was like kicking myself because I feel like I've been looking for her number, but I was either spelling it wrong or something. But she was in there, and the last thing we texted was in 2016, and I asked her where I could go to get more information about hospice, like where, like what conferences, blah 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 blah. And she gave me the info to this conference in 2016. In 2016.
And you came 9 years later.
Isn't that wild?
Wow.
Oh my God. And I feel like that it was like, to me, it was kind of like weekend's over. Like, I don't need anything else to happen.
But you know what? That's what it's about. And thanks for sharing that. Like, that's not a coincidence. That is like so divine. How can you go to a random hotel down the street and be in the online line at that moment and run into your mentor? Like that was meant to be a full
I know.
circle. Just, because we don't always get to see how we make a difference.
Right.
And so I thank you. It's
Yeah.
that's just so like I want to hug you through this camera
I
because
know. I was so excited.
I know how it feels too. We're not friends, so you don't necessarily know my story, but I went to med school at 37, non-traditional student. And so there's particular people who were instrumental. And I feel like, I want to make them proud. I want them to know that I'm making a difference in the field. And it's an extension of their work too, that,
Yeah.
I can do what I do. So that is just so exciting. I hope your omelet was good.
It was okay.
Yeah. That's what it's about. So I totally get you. So the conference, it can get kind of wonky, like going to all the different sessions, but we're just going to highlight what we liked and then go from there. So first of all, I have to show this button. Everybody knows I wear it. Ask me about the Hospice Medical Director Certification Board. And that's why I have the HMDCB after my name, HMDC after my name, because we are certified to be a good hospice doctor. Because don't you want a good hospice doctor like hospice nurse Julie had?
That's really cool. That's really
Yeah.
cool. Yeah.
So yeah, look into that. And so let's just get going. So let's see. I arrived and let me see. I'm trying to find it in my
Yeah. Were you
notes.
there the whole time?
Yeah, I was there the whole time because, it's kind of like my time to get refreshed and all that stuff. So I
Yeah.
do the whole thing.
That's great.
So the opening reception, this is exciting for me. I saw the president-elect, Dr. Kimberly Kersing, and we saw our book in print. So I have to share this.
Nice.
This is the updated Hospice Medical Director Manual. Actually, they changed the title. The Hospice Physician and Hospice Medical Director Manual put out by the Academy. And we wrote the chapter about diversity in hospice care. And that's apropos. It's February, it's Black History Month.
Yeah.
Not that that's the only diversity, but we talked about the LGBTQIA community. We talked about all those things because in our work, we walk up to strangers' homes and we need to be able to relate. And so this is something we do every single day. So we just kind of highlighted it and we learn from our teammates. I may have an experience that you don't have and vice versa. So we learn from each other. And so that's what this chapter does. And so I'm very proud of it. So that is for the fellows that are in their fellowship and hopefully others that want to come do the work and be a mentor like your mentor was. What's her name? I want to be able to say it.
Dr. Anna Cartmel. Like
Carmel.
Cartmel.
Yeah,
Cartmel.
awesome. So that
She's
was in LA.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, that was my highlight from the opening reception, seeing that. And then I had some time at the table for the board. And so a lot of fellows came over and visited us actually interested in hospice. Because most of the time people go to fellowship and then they do inpatient palliative or outpatient.
Right. Yeah. Right. And then they're interested in going into hospice after that, right? Or
no, it's like, well, we can say this, I don't know all the places you've, done your hospice work, but, we have the most hospice agencies in California. They call us the Wild Wild West. And
Yeah.
most of these places have different people who are not
You know,
involved.
I got lucky. I've only worked in two places in Los Angeles as far as for hospice.
Mhm.
And I got lucky. We have amazing medical directors, amazing doctors, amazing fellows, super involved, super into it. But I know I've heard
Yeah.
otherwise. I've heard otherwise. But
Yeah. And
that has not been my experience, thank God.
lucky because we need to protect hospice nurse Julie at all costs. Okay. So
I can protect. Don't worry. I've got a mouth on me. Like if I don't think something's right, you better
that's what I
believe
like.
I'm gonna be saying something.
Amen. So
Yeah.
no, everyone just, everyone talks about California. There's a lot of small agencies, a lot with 20 or less patients. And so we want people to know what they're doing. We want them to get this book or get Dr. G's Hospice Pocket Guide so that we can do quality care and be good leaders for our teams. How about that? I'll just leave it at
Yeah.
that.
And really understand the regulations of hospice too, the ins and outs of like what's allowed, what's not allowed. I've heard so many times people be like, "Oh, we can't do that." And I'd be like, "Says who?" Like, "Yes, we can. I know the regulations more than you. Apparently, we can do
You
that.
do.
You just don't want to because it's too expensive, or maybe you won't be reimbursed, or maybe or whatever it is, right? Like, it's like you gotta know. I don't know.
Yeah. And I love those videos you put out. I've seen you put out the regulatory videos, team, audience. I may be the doctor, but hospice is really led by nurses. I call you all the quarterbacks. Like you literally are we call them RN case managers. You're running the show, in my opinion. You got to put those orders in and organize this. And I now, we don't have the his anymore. We have the hope coming up. I know that was a
Mhm.
session. You know what's up. And so I've learned a lot of things that I've learned from nurses. Hospice nurse Shelly out there, all her videos she puts out, like
Yeah,
I
great.
learned, yeah, all that stuff. And so I thank you for doing that. So anyway, that's what I got on the first day. So we can move to the second day. That was Thursday. That's when I ran into you. And then I don't remember any of the sessions from that day because it was a lot.
I
But
did a session that day about it was run by a nurse. Oh my gosh, this is what I mean. It was a great session. It made me feel like inspired when I was done. It was about like pain, managing pain, assessing pain, what we used to do in hospice for pain. So she was like clever and funny. Um, it made me really just want to like always be sure to take the time to really see if someone's having pain, right? Because it's more of like you go to the patient's home, the patient's sleeping at the time, right? And the family goes, no, they're fine, right? But then like really, if you actually talk to them, it's like, oh, well, they were up this time and they had this and they had this and they were taking this medicine, it's not working. And if you actually really sit and talk to them. And I think it's easy for me to feel inspired because I work per diem. I don't work full time. I'm a unionized nurse. And I remember when I wasn't and I was working full time, it is really hard to sometimes take your time to like really sit down and talk with the family, talk with the patient. So there would have been a time in my life when like I would have been annoyed by that because I do think sometimes nurses are not sometimes, most of the time nurses are overworked. So this idea of
yeah,
like, taking a lot of time is like, yeah, we'd love to if we could. Anyway,
yeah.
my point being is like, because I have a different experience now with nursing because I work per diem and for a unionized company, I do have time. So it
Hmm.
really made me feel like, oh yeah, it just was really helpful. I liked the nurse presenter. It was mostly nurses in the audience, which is it doesn't matter if it wasn't, but just felt like a big group, like a big family.
That's good. And I'm
Mhm.
glad you say that because we've covered topics about, the documentation burden. We
Oh my
we don't want to have a limited workforce of nurses and doctors. We know we lost so many nurses in the pandemic, and so you're making it cool again. I
God.
hope some of your followers are like, "Wait, I'm going to be a hospice nurse like Hospice Nurse Julie," because it
Oh,
is a good lifestyle to visit people in their homes and have the autonomy. We need to get together with AI or whatever we need to do to figure out where we're not documenting for hours after you do
the
your whole day.
documentation. If I didn't have to document, my job would truly be there'd be zero complaints about my job. Documentation is pretty rough. And then like having to do it according to like Medicare guidelines so we get reimbursed is like torture.
Yeah.
Torture. I get it.
Yeah. Yeah, well, thank you for that. So yeah, and so that day after I saw you, let's see, I went to dinner with some folks. Again, it's about connecting with our groups. This is a
Yeah.
group we had during COVID. It was a group called PalliCOVID, and it's doctors and a PA too from across the country. We would get on Zoom every Wednesday and just kind of talk. And so we had dinner
Oh my
at an
god.
Italian
Fun.
restaurant. And then since I was out, they made me go to that pub crawl, which I'm like, what is this?
Did
So,
people get crazy? That's my
no,
no one got
no,
crazy, huh?
not that people were just doing their
Mm.
thing. I didn't see any of that, and I'm glad you mentioned that. Do you want to,
I
I
was
know
just
you've
gonna
been
say,
very,
'cause I would have gone crazy. I would have found my people if I was there. Like some nurses behind me asked me if I was going to the pub crawl, and I was like, guys, I'm an alcoholic in recovery. P.S. I've been sober for 9 years. But I'm
Mhm,
like,
mhm.
you don't want me at that pub crawl. Or if here's the thing, I would have been fun. I wasn't like a mean drunk. I was like fun, but I would have been like there to party. And
Yeah,
I would have found some people, I think. I would have usually nurses and doctors, I can find like some of my people that would have done the same thing, but then I would have never gone to the rest of the conference. Literally. I've done that at conferences. When I used to work in the ICU, there was a conference I went to in San Diego, and a nurse friend and I went there Friday night, ended up going out, didn't go to the rest of the conference. I just
mm.
had fun. I mean, I still had fun, but I didn't go to the conference. But anyway, so it always amazes me when people can do like bar crawls and just be regular.
And I'm glad, you have insight for this because I saw that you recently shared your sobriety. Congratulations.
Yeah,
Like,
thanks.
how is that for you? Like, because when I thought about this, I was like, wait, like, I wouldn't invite her. Like, are we being insensitive? Like, what do you want to share about that?
Oh yes, no, you can totally invite me. You can totally drink around me, um, and I would. So I would sometimes go to those things and just not drink. It's just not like totally my vibe anymore. Like I'm not like
Hmm.
crazy about bars. Not even because of alcohol, just because like it's loud. It's hard for me to
Yeah.
hear anything. It's crowded. Like I'm not super into crowds and not being able to hear and being having things be loud. So
Yeah.
not really my
Yeah.
bag anymore. But I'm not offended. I would love to be invited. And sometimes I would say no, sometimes I would say yes. Totally comfortable with other people drinking around me. It's just it's my thing.
No,
Sobriety is my
I'm glad because again, this is diversity too. We need to know and we need to be sensitive, and we encounter this also with our patients.
yeah.
So thank you for sharing that. It seemed like more of a cultural excursion because we started at the Irish one, we went to the German one, and then they went to some other one. I'm like, we're doing DEI, I guess. We're still doing DEI in the assembly.
That's right. That's right. I like it. I
Yeah.
like it.
Yeah. So anyway, now to Friday. I went to the executive committee meeting. There's a business meeting every year. And so they installed the new president, Dr. Arif Kamal, and then everything kind of switched. And
Oh,
yeah, the leadership, the board, the
yeah, yeah, yeah,
bosses,
yeah.
and all that stuff. Um, let's see. I went to a
Friday.
session.
Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, 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 you go. Go, go, go.
I was just gonna say, I think in the morning I like um did a lot of walking around and talking to people. I did a bunch of like, hey, like seeing people I haven't seen before, or like meeting people that I know from the internet that I wanted to see in person, right?
Yeah.
So I did a lot of that in the morning. I loved walking around at the booths. I like didn't think I would like that. I'm into it. I love
You get
pens.
free stuff. Look,
Yeah,
look, I got
pens.
my little spinner from it.
Yes. Fidget spinners. This
And my bracelet.
this is
Look,
one of the pens. This is one of the pens. And
we like good
really
pens.
cool organization. So I like liked walking around being like, what are you doing here? What's going on with you?
Well, I think that's what the conference is. So that's good. Like I had an IDG that morning. I literally went there and got on an IDG in
I
the
think I
morning.
remember you telling me that. That's so good. I think that's the day too. I went to a really good pharmacist one where these two, I think a nurse and a pharmacist, I could be wrong, but they talked about an algorithm to go through to see if you should continue medications or stop medications on hospice.
Mm.
And I like that because so many times you don't know how to explain to families why you're stopping and this really took you through like step by step how you can make that decision and then how you can explain it to the family.
Yeah,
So I think
maybe you can
it's great.
share that here because I had an admission today, where we were I call it simplifying the med list
Yeah.
and talking to the RN case manager about it, the atorvastatin, the blood thinners, all that stuff, what's related, what's not related. Do you want to share with our audience like why we simplify the med list when someone's admitted to hospice? Like we're not trying to make them die faster or anything.
Exactly. I always just talk. So you could technically use this algorithm, which I don't, of course, have in front of me, but they actually give you like a step by step algorithm you can use. Generally speaking, when I explain it, I always go by, making sure the families understand that we want what's best for them. So I always try to make sure they understand like I am here for you. This is not like a us against you. Hospice is just trying to basically kill you, which many people think, right? So it's like we are here to make your experience the best we can. So please know that I'm on your team. I'm on your side. Like we're not just going to stop something because you're on hospice now. So start there. And then I always say it's a risk versus benefit. Like, is the risk of taking this medicine like a blood thinner, especially, a blood thinner, is the risk of that, particularly if you're a fall risk, if you're not swallowing very well, like, is the risk of it taking it higher than the benefit of having it? Anything to do with cholesterol, is the is it worth being on this medication? Do you like being on all these meds? Do you want us to pull back? And then, of course, if they really don't want to, or the family's really lenient or, really hesitant, I don't totally push it. Particularly the hospice I work for now is really great about that. The other hospice I worked for before was a little more pushy, which I didn't like. And I understood where they were at, but sometimes it takes people time to ease into being comfortable with stopping certain medications. At the end of the day, I always say, we're not going to take you off something that's going to give you like horrible symptoms if you don't have it. We're not going to let you have a bunch of edema just so we can take you off your Lasix. No, well, if you need it, you can have it. But it's just an ongoing conversation.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's more than one conversation.
Yeah, yeah. So everyone, if you're a lay person listening to this, again, we update the plan of care as often as necessary, but every, IDG every 13 days, 14 days. And it's always in line with your goals of care, like Hospice Nurse Julie said, and what the symptoms are. We focus on quality of life and symptom management. And so we talked about this with Dr. Templeton on my podcast before, just goals of care and deprescribing and just how that's important. So I could put a link to that in the show notes. You guys can listen to that later, but I was happy to hear that from Hospice Nurse Julie's perspective. So I went to a session. I loved it. It was entitled When Patients Express Anger.
Oh,
It was really good. Just all my career, whenever, even in the hospital, like, oh, a problem family, oh, this, oh, they're difficult. I gravitate to them to help them to
yeah.
bridge. And so they
Yeah.
really, really had some great I'm gonna find that real quick. Great ideas in how to address that, like actually a step-by-step process.
And it felt like
Um,
attainable. Like it felt like, oh, this is good. Like it
yeah, yeah,
didn't.
yeah.
Yeah,
I'm
that's
about
great.
I'm about to find it, but how do you deal with emotional, well, anger is actually just a front for like fear or something else like that or hurt. How do you deal with patients when they're angry while I look for the steps?
Yeah, I think I'm like you. I think I kind of gravitate towards that, or like I'm okay with it. I think, you know, it does take time and practice, I think, learning how to like read the room, right? Understand what's going on. And I think just over time, because I've done this for a while and I particularly have more time to spend with patients and families because I'm not full time. I don't have a full caseload. It's a little easier for me to like sit down and really just listen to them first. So if they're already angry, coming in hot, I let them go. I let them talk, say all the things, like get everything, like make sure they are kind of like exhausted at all the talking and like everything they need to say. And then I validate how they feel because they must be very frustrated. And like you said, at the end of the day, usually after they talk about it for a little bit, they're crying, right? They're crying. They're frustrated. They're sad. This is hard. We keep getting the runaround, all the things, right? And then I try to do my best to fully explain what has gone on and what will go on. Because I think, I don't know if you've had this experience, but because I was an ICU nurse working in the hospital for so long, I kind of saw that rigmarole, like how that happens, how the buck can get passed and things get missed and whatever, right? Next thing you know, they're going home on hospice and they're kind of confused why and what, no one really explained it to them. And then they come to us and there's scheduling difficulties and whatever, right? That's making them mad. Um,
Yeah.
so it's like I've just seen it so often, so many times that like you just learn how to explain what has happened. Like this is
Yeah.
what happened. This is what I'm seeing with my experience. This is
Mm.
where I think you're at. This is the disease that I've seen over and over and over again. And this is what you can expect. So I spend a lot of time talking and talking and talking and explaining and educating, helping people understand. And I think the thing that I really like to say, if you're a healthcare worker out there, I can do that because I work per diem and I work for a unionized hospital that doesn't push me to see like 6 patients a day. That is
Mhm.
why I can do that. And I like to say that because I think people are really hard on themselves when they're in healthcare and they're like, yeah, but how do you have the time? Then I'd be working all day and charting all night and all the things. And that's the not fair part. It is not fair. We don't, we, it's hard to do it unless, so it's like, I do have this particular space and time in my life where I have the ability to do it. So I do it. So, I mean, I can spend a couple hours sometimes with the family.
Yeah, me too. Me
Yeah.
too. And I think this circles back around to the work you're doing on social media to empower the people where they are, so they have the education, so
Yeah.
they're not jerked around by the healthcare system um, before they get to us. Because that's exactly what we do. We have to kind of undo all the damage when they get to us, and then when they come to us at the last hour.
I know. And sometimes, I have definitely have had days where it's like, it doesn't matter what I say. Like,
Yeah, of
there,
course.
there are families and days, and it's not the family's fault. It's not my fault. It's just
Yeah.
circumstances and their past beliefs or whatever it is. It's like, it doesn't matter who comes in here or what's said. This is what they're going to believe and what they're going to think. And those are really hard days. Those are really hard days. But I
Yeah.
hope that like, I know not everyone can spend 2 hours with the family, right? I know sometimes families don't want to hear it. So I'm hoping with my education online, with the videos, with the book, it starts getting out kind of like in the mainstream.
Yes.
So it'll let some slack off of the nurses, off of the doctors. I've had nurses write to me saying, thank you so much. I went to go in to like do whatever. And the family said, it's okay. I already know what you're gonna say. I've been watching Hospice Nurse Julie, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like,
Yay.
"Oh my God, thank you." They're like,
Yes.
You saved me so much time." Like, they knew all the things, and I'm like, that is like my dream. Not that families should have to do that, but it's like in today's healthcare, like, you know how it is. It's like I don't have an answer on how to fix it. So
Yeah. No, we're all making a difference. You're making a big, huge difference. And so that's why I'm so grateful you are here, because that's what social media does. We can influence and make our culture better. And so I'm just so grateful for you. But yeah, the steps about when patients express anger, this was by, I
yeah,
just happened to take a picture of the slide, Danielle Chalmers, MD, Teddy Scheel, sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong, LS, a social worker in MPH, Mike Palisso, a social worker, and Carrie Brenner, MD. I forgot where they were out of. But 3 steps to approach anger. Number 1, look within. So our attitudes, what is happening with me?
oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then, because they talked
Yeah.
about counter transference and all that stuff. And we all have a lens through which we look at the world. And
We certainly
so
do.
yeah. And so look within
Certainly do.
first. And then step 2, ask why. So our knowledge, what might be happening to them? So after we check ourselves and we can look at them, that sounds like a scripture I know. Take the plank out, take the something out your own eye before you try to do the speck, or something like that, Jesus said. Right. And then the third step, act mindfully. That's our
Yeah.
skills. And so we probably do that without thinking, instead of reacting like, oh, why are they so difficult? Why are they no, why are they angry? Because they've been jerked around. Because I don't know if you watch this movie, I'm just gonna mention it because they did a really good job. And the lady was at Inwell this past time, Timbe Locke,
From
from
scratch. From
scratch.
scratch.
I just watched it. I'm
Yes.
late. I'm late.
That's one of the first shows. She's in my book. That show is in my book.
No way.
Yes, because I thought, oh, finally, a show that's
Hold
doing
your
a good
book
job
up.
at
You have your book up
explaining.
by you? Hold it up.
Do you see? Oh, it's over here. Do you see
Okay,
it?
okay. I'm sorry
That's
to interrupt
nothing to
because I
fear.
got excited. Go ahead. So she's in your book?
Yeah, well, that the show is in my book because there were so many times, specifically when he was in the ICU, and how the nephrologist comes in and the oncologist comes in and the surgeon comes in, and but no one's like talking to each other. And I mean, that was my experience in the ICU. That was my experience in the ICU. I had a man on pressers for 6 months, fully unconscious, toes black, fingers black, tip of the nose black, on every machine possible to keep him alive. And they would still come in and be like, well, his creatinine numbers are going down, so that's good. You know what I mean? And you'd be like, what? are we gonna talk about what's actually happening here? This
So
man's
sad.
literally rotting away in a bed, and we're talking about his creatinine. That story is the story of my book that it literally changed my life, because for the first time I spoke up and said during rounds at Johns Hopkins with a million people, and I said, I think we need to have a family meeting to talk about the big picture.
What? You did?
And yes, and I was like scared. I was scared. I was like 2 years into nursing, I was like, and what I found was that every single person was like, yes, 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 yes. Like everyone got on board. Like it was like I spoke the elephant in the room. And there was a meeting that night, or I'm sorry, a meeting later on the afternoon with the family, and they took the patient off the machines and they died before the end of my shift. And although I was like devastated, because it was like this person I'd taken care of for like months and months and months, I was super close to him, to the family, to everybody. And it felt like it was my fault. Of course, I know now it wasn't, but at the time it did.
Compassionate extubation, what we call that, guys.
Yeah, terminal extubation. Yep. Turn off all the machines, and of course they died immediately.
And you feel
Yeah.
like that it was hard for you because, I'm sorry to interrupt you. It was hard because why?
It was hard because I wasn't who I am today, right? I was still a very brand new ICU nurse. 2 years to me felt still brand new, and I knew it was the right thing, but it still felt like it was because of me. Like I knew if I did not say that day, he would still be, they would not have shut off the machines because there wasn't going to be a family meeting. I knew it was right, but it was the first time I had done that. And so although it was hard and it felt bad at first, it gave me this like newfound, like, oh, that's all you have to do is speak up. And that would started me on the journey of speaking up in the ICU, and then eventually led me to be a hospice nurse. I've had a few people,
Conversations.
yeah, the conversation that I thought was not being had for, that's what From Scratch talks about, is like, I thought the conversation was not being had for some other reason that I didn't know. And I think that's what happens with everyone in healthcare. We all kind of think the same thing, but we're like, but someone else has probably already had the conversation. Or maybe I don't know, maybe I'm missing something. Maybe there is another reason why we're not talking about this. And what I found was there isn't one. No one's just talking about it. And that's what
I'm glad you said that.
From Scratch did a great job. To bring it back to that, From Scratch did a great job at explaining that.
Yeah. And I'm glad you reiterated something that Helen said from the Heart of Hospice podcast, because we collaborated for National Healthcare Decisions Day last year, and I'm beating up the doctors, like, we're not doing it. I don't know. She's like, it takes all of us, all of her team, because the nurse probably thinks they did it, the social worker, the case manager, and all this. And I said, well, I'm glad we're doing an interdisciplinary discussion, because we got to fix this so people know what's up. So awesome. Well, anyway, those were the steps, and I'm glad we have that connection with From Scratch. Watch that on Netflix, guys, because I'm telling you, I cried, and I do this every day. And so the 2 last episodes, they were so realistic. They did a great job.
They did a great job. I agree.
Like work. It felt like work.
Yep. They did a great job.
Yeah. So anyway, that's the only session I remember from the day, but that was one I wanted to make a note of, so people can be sensitive of different backgrounds. Our society right now, is really, we've been through a lot. I think we have not recovered from the pandemic. We got all the politics and stuff going on in the division. Everyone's just so stressed and upset right now. Like, we just need to breathe, and I don't know how we're going to reset ourselves, but
I don't know either. But
hopefully that helps. Anyway,
we're gonna do our little things that we can do. That's what I keep telling myself. I'm like, you're gonna do little things that you can do to help others around you.
Yes, that's all we can do. And then, so after that night, I went to that Italian restaurant twice. I guess I was getting ready for Italy, but I went with someone who was one of the co-authors of that chapter. She was actually working in internal medicine. Dr. Latasha Hayes, shout out to you in Florida. She's a fellow right now. So this is what I'm talking about. That's why it's so wonderful. Like, she reached out to me on LinkedIn saying, I want to start doing hospice. And so I was like, sure, I'll help you. And now she's a fellow and doing all this stuff. And I'm like, go on, girl.
That's so amazing. That's so great. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah. And then Saturday, I went to the Voices of HAPC. It was a really, really good panel of
I should have followed you around.
Come next year, and we're going to be besties.
I know. I was going to say, because I liked the ones I went to, of course, but like, if I had to do it over again, I think, I would follow, maybe go around with someone who's already done this. You know what I mean? I kept picking these like little obscure ones, which were still good. They were still good, right? But like, anyway, go ahead. Talk about yours.
No. There's certain ones, like, they have some narrative medicine ones. Like, you don't have to do all the academic ones, because we do this brainiac stuff all the time.
I think that's what I did, because I wanted to like learn more and know stuff, and it was still good. Like, I did, but anyway. Next time. There's one every year, right? So
okay, Penny, I'm gonna steal you from Penny.
Yeah.
So that was it. So you are the valuable resource, like your website, Hospice Nurse Julie. Everyone, you need to get her book. What's it mean to be a New York Times bestseller? Teach us about that fame.
It is so unbelievable. I mean, I don't really know how it happens. I was on for 1 week, and I mean, I don't know. It's flattering. It still feels pretty unbelievable, but I really have all my followers to thank. I mean, I think that's how I sold most books. It was just through my following, which is so brilliant and amazing, and I'm just so grateful. I'm so grateful. And what's really cool, because I don't really stay, I don't want to know like how many books I've sold, and I don't ask my publisher. I tell them not to tell me how many books I actually sold because I don't really want to know. But what they do tell me is that, week by week, month by month, it continues to consistently sell, which I think shows me that people need the information. They want the information. They're buying it for family members, and it's kind of rippling out. So it's gonna be published in 4 different languages. So there'll be like a second edition. Yeah, isn't that amazing? Yeah.
Congratulations. Well, I just want to say thank you on behalf of our culture that is death phobic. I've learned so
Yeah.
much going to med school. My medical school did a great job of getting me here. That's the reason why I chose this, because they introduced
Oh, that's
palliative care and
great.
hospice to us. Texas A&M, shout out to you all from 2012. And but most people don't have that information, and the work you're doing, people like you, hospice nurse Penny, all the end of life doulas and
Yeah.
the multitude of folks is making a difference. So we never, and I have to give a shout out to Death Deck too,
Yeah. Oh my gosh, Lisa.
because that's awesome, Lisa Paul.
Yeah.
I just never want to hear people say, I wish I knew about hospice sooner. Like, that just breaks my heart.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why didn't the doctor tell me? That's why I
I
was like,
know.
"Oh." So we're putting this stuff out here so we can help people. And I'm just so grateful to be a part of the work. I'm so happy I got to talk to you a little bit more closely and support you. Poor baby's
I know.
rubbing her nose. She's been sick. We had to reschedule, but she needs to get back to bed. So we're going to wrap this up. I want you to be able to have the final words here as we wrap up this bonus episode.
Well, I mean, I think the same way you do. I'm so grateful to meet other people who are also, like boots on the ground. I feel like like you're really like in the hospice and palliative care community, and I feel like I'm a little more, which is still good, but like a little more like in the general public, right? Because of the social media thing. So I appreciate everything everyone's doing to kind of like keep moving um, this agenda of like talking about death and dying forward, because I kind of felt like that wasn't happening. And then all of a sudden I got on social media and I was doing it. And then I met many other people who are also doing it, who also think like I do. So I really appreciate you. And this whole community that feels the same way we do, and just trying to keep it going.
Amen. Amen to that. All right. Well, we need to get you back to bed and recover because we're
I
having
can't
summertime
wait.
in Southern California. All right.
Thank you
Well,
so much for everything.
all right. Well, everyone, thank you for joining this bonus episode. We are off season, but we had to touch base with Hospice Nurse Julie to do this highlight, and we are so grateful to be here. We're signing out. Peace.
Bye.